Well, the Championship is back after FA Cup third round weekend, and we've got 12 fixtures to run through, preview and predict today. As well as that, there are 3 new managers making their Championship debuts, and we've covered all of those in manager specials over the last week. You can find them up in the eye above somewhere. But today, we're going to look ahead to matchday 27, all of the fixtures taking place this weekend. And of course, I'll encourage you as always to get involved in the comments. Give me your score predictions for matchday 27. And if you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap, which will be live on the channel in about a week's time. But for now, let's go and have a quick look back at matchday 26, the New Year's edition in the Championship. And it was a disappointing day for me. A couple of what might have beens, and also a few shock scores that got all of us. So not many predicted a Swansea win against West Brom, and the one who did won the match day. Not many predicted a Wednesday win against Hull. Not many predicted a Coventry win away at Middlesbrough, and not many had Millwall winning at Bristol City either. There were some bonkers scores in the Championship. But overall, the Championship's favourite scoreline saved me. Norwich v Southampton, a 1-1 draw, my perfect score. And then 4 other points for the draws at Plymouth and at Stoke, as well as the home wins for Leeds and Leicester, which I think most of us predicted. Overall, though, it was a low-scoring week. Just one person made double figures, just 3 people managed to beat my low score of 7, and one of you managed to match it as well. So well done to BPK, who got 7 points as well. Brian, 3rd place with 8 this week, a very good effort given the results. The same for Tio on 9 in 2nd place, a really good effort from you. But RZL pulled one out the bag. 3 perfect scores. And just one of those weeks where all of your gambles paid off. We mentioned the Swansea one. You had a Sheffield Wednesday win as well. 12 points overall, a cracking effort. But now it's matchday 27. A fresh week, a fresh opportunity for everyone. How are we all going to get on? Well, we're going to start with the Friday night football as Hull City host Norwich City. Both sides frustrated and forced to have an extra fixture next midweek with an FA Cup replay. It was a little bit hostile at Norwich, with David Wagner being wanted out by some sections of the fan base, and it was a run of 4 without a win in all competitions now. Only 2 goals scored, and while they were better defensively, away at West Brom, Millwall and at home to Southampton, they haven't been able to find a result, albeit 2 of those are in the top 5. So a very difficult game for them, as Hull City are up in that playoff chase as well. If we go back to their last league game, they were frustrated at Sheffield Wednesday. They were actually very poor in the first half anyway, but obviously a very harsh red card, which has since been rescinded, was part of the reasoning for their downfall in the second. But overall, they weren't good enough either way, and that 3-game week just caught up with them. They've been a bit inconsistent recently. They've certainly dropped off away from home, but at home against the Norwich side, who are struggling a little bit, I do fancy them to perhaps nick the victory. I think there's every chance this could be a Championship's favourite scoreline, and there's not often many goals in the Friday night football. I am going to gamble on 3 in this one and go for Hull to edge it by 2-1. Unfortunately, I won't be watching that one, as Burnley are playing Luton at the same time now. If we move on to Saturday though, we've got a lunchtime kickoff on TV. It is Coventry City versus Leicester City. 2 of the form teams in the division at the moment. Leicester, the runaway leaders, we don't need to say much about them. They completely overpowered Huddersfield as we expected, albeit they maybe weren't quite so solid defensively. But Coventry are absolutely flying. They found their goal threat, of course scored 6 in the cup, but also scored 2 or more in all of their previous 4 league games. And even when they played one of those top sides away in Leeds in recent weeks, they were really solid defensively at that point as well. I actually have high hopes for this game. I think it's going to be an absolute cracker. I'm really hoping we're going to see some quality. We're seeing with Coventry, the likes of Sakamoto, Haji Wright really starting to impress. Callum O'Hare is building fitness and is starting to look good. And Ellis Sims is popping up with the odd goal as well. I really do feel Coventry are going to be in that playoff mix again. I said it at the start of the season, and I believe it now as well. I'm going to go for a high-scoring draw in this one. I think Coventry can stop Leicester winning. Not many have this year. And I'm going to go for Leicester to concede 2 goals. Something that doesn't often happen in the league. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw in a lunchtime kickoff. Let's move on to the 3 p.m s, and we start with the new manager doubleheader. It is Tony Mowbray's Birmingham City versus Luke Williams' Swansea City. Of course, Swansea were managed by Williams in the FA Cup win against Morecambe last weekend. Tony Mowbray came in on Monday morning at Birmingham City. Both of those manager specials in the eye above, and thank you for the support with them. We won't actually do too much detail on this game because I don't want to go over the same things again, but Swansea going back to their more original style, I guess you would say, the man who worked under Russell Martin, a man who has played brilliant football at Notts County in a wonderful season last year and some very good results this. And they did get a great result against West Brom. Alan Sheehan has to be given credit. He got them away from the relegation mix and he did really well in interim charge. And great to see that he's staying as well. But Birmingham have got to change. They were more impressive against Hull in the Cup, a much more spirited display. But in Tony Mowbray, if given patience, if given time, I think they've got a gem there. I still feel he was harshly sacked by Sunderland, and I still don't feel that will benefit them long term. But if Birmingham stick with Mowbray, they've got a proven championship manager who works with young teams and overachieves normally. And I feel he can do the same here. We saw at home under John Eustace what this Birmingham side are capable of. We know they've got quality in the team. I do feel it will perhaps take a little bit longer, albeit the fans will be right on board after the disaster stint with Wayne Rooney. There's part of me that thinks Birmingham will win this, but it's a step into the unknown. We're all going to have different scores for this because we have no idea how the new managers will get on. I think Swansea will try and keep the ball. I think Birmingham will be a threat out wide on the counter. And I think both may nick a goal. So I'm going to go for Birmingham 1, Swansea 1. But ultimately, with two new managers, it's anyone's guess what the score will be. Let's move on to a game between two of the top 9 in the Championship. It is Cardiff City versus Leeds United. For Leeds, back-to-back 3-0 wins, firstly at home to Birmingham and then at Peterborough in the Cup. Of course, not had a great year and a half, but Patrick Bamford did score one of the best goals you'll see all year. Ampadu popped up with a couple as well, and a couple of returns to form after a difficult month for Leeds. For Cardiff, they were awful at Sheffield Wednesday in the Cup, and I mean, it was summarised in the first 10 minutes, wasn't it? Gave away a goal in the second, missed penalties twice in the first 10, and then just got completely overran. It was a very disappointing day. But they did beat QPR away from home in their last league game. They managed to get ahead again after being pegged back. They showed a bit of spirit, and they were just about the better side there, despite giving up a lot of the ball. And that's what we're going to see here, I think, as well. Leeds are normally their most threatening away from home when they can play rapidly on the counter. And I think Cardiff will sit deep, almost play like an away team, and try not to allow that in this game. So I do think it's going to be a bit lower scoring, and I was tempted to go for 1-0. But I'm going to double that. I'm going to go for a late second. Cardiff 0, Leeds United 2. And they've got to win, frankly, if they want to get back in the race for the top 2. Let's move on to a big game at the other end of the table. It is Huddersfield Town versus Ian Foster's Plymouth. The third new manager makes his debut this weekend. Was on the touchline despite not picking a team against Sutton United as they won in the FA Cup. And again, we've covered it already in that manager special. He's got to deal with the away record and he's got to deal with the defensive record. If he can improve either of those or both, Plymouth have got a great chance of being comfortable this year. But they come up against a side who have had a very difficult week, playing top sides in the league in Borough and Leicester after that brilliant win against Blackburn, and then going City in the FA Cup. And to be fair, based on recent years, losing 5 isn't a bad effort. But this is the sort of game that Huddersfield have got to bounce back in. I think a lot of people will go for a draw here and a high-scoring one, and I can really understand why. But I just feel Huddersfield are going to nick it. They've got a lot of attacking talent coming back from injury, and while neither of these teams has one of the best sides on paper in the Championship, they've both got the ability to score goals, and I believe both will. I actually think it's going to be a tough start for Ian Foster this weekend, and Huddersfield, in these crucial games, they've normally popped up, haven't they, and nicked a win. We saw a great one against Blackburn. We saw them grit a point away at Millwall, and I'm going to go for them to get all 3 here by 2-1. Next up is the side that has been flying the flag for the Championship in the Carabao Cup this week. It is Millwall versus Middlesbrough, who were brilliant on Tuesday night against Chelsea. What a defensive effort to get a 1-0 win, albeit Cole Palmer probably committed miss of the century in that game. But Hayden Hackney had a couple of chances, took one of them in the end. And it was a really well-worked goal on the counter from Middlesbrough. But it was a Herculean effort at a cost because they already had 12 players unavailable. 2 more off injured in the first half of that game. And it became a very difficult spell for them. They're so limited on the bench with 4 or 5 young players on there. And you just feel that Middlesbrough, even if it's a couple of loans, are going to need reinforcements soon. They lost a bit of a goal threat with Latilaf going off early as well. So I do worry for them a bit this weekend. Millwall played against Leicester in the FA Cup, did okay, but came out second best. But prior to that, after an awful run, 3 wins, 3 clean sheets, and where on earth has it come from? They look a lot better defensively. They've not got a huge goal threat, but they're starting to show that gritty Millwall style. And if they can build a little bit of the Joe Edwards style around it, then I think they're going to be flying. A late winner against Bristol City was a really important result for them. Just took them to the top of that sort of bunch above the relegation zone. And they're starting to look like a very solid side again. So for this game, just because I feel for Middlesbrough it's going to be a game too far, not through any Michael Carrick's doing. And I think they've got a great chance of getting to the final. They were unfortunate against Villa in the FA Cup, but it probably benefits them in the long term. I'm going to go for Middlesbrough to lose this game. I just don't feel they've got enough players, and the effort on Tuesday will harm them. So Millwall to win and keep another clean sheet. I'm going to go by 2-0. Let's move on to another game that I think will be low scoring. Spoiler alert, it's Preston versus Bristol City. Bristol City, as always, proving to be the hardest team to predict in the Championship. 1-3 in a row. I got stick for not predicting more. I predict a win, and they lose 1-0 at home to Millwall late on. And not only that, we've got to be honest about it. They were poor in that game. They had one shot on target, a few corners, a bit of the ball. They did nothing with it. They didn't look inspiring. And after 2 brilliant attacking displays against Hull and Watford, the ones against Birmingham and Millwall will be a real surprise. But then they were very good against West Ham after. So it's typical Bristol City, impossible to predict. Preston, no, a little easier. Yes, they nicked the win against Leeds with that magical Miller goal. But since then, a 1-0 defeat at home to Wednesday, we correctly predicted. A 2-0 defeat at Sunderland, where they were god-awful, by the way. Sunderland weren't great under Mick Beale, and they didn't create a lot, but Preston were rubbish again. They actually had more of the ball, which was a bit of a surprise, but didn't really look like scoring. And based on what we saw in the last home game against Wednesday, and what we've seen from Bristol City recently, I have to go for the same again. I think they're 2 of the least inspiring teams in the Championship going forward. They're generally behind everyone in and around and above them in terms of goals scored this season. So I'm going to go for Preston 0, Bristol City 1. I think Bristol City are the more likely to have a moment of magic, but 0-0 or 1-0 either way for me. Let's move on to Rotherham versus Stoke City. It is a big game for Rotherham, who really have to win these games if they want to keep in touch. But it's not going to be easy against Stephen Schumacher's Stoke, because they're now unbeaten under his tenure, despite the fact nearly all of those have been draws. They did get the win at Birmingham, but otherwise it's been about being very tight, very solid. Maybe not the most inspiring, but doing the job for now. They've definitely improved defensively, and for the first time they don't look like hemorrhaging goals. But Rotherham, we know, are competitive at home. They've not been brilliant away this season, but their last 2 home performances were interesting. They were dogged defensively against Borough, and while they got absolutely outplayed, they clung on in there and got the goal. And against Sunderland, they actually played well. So I do feel there's promising signs for Rotherham. They even got a draw away at Blackburn on New Year's Day, and that's despite the fact they were 2-1 down in the second half. They only let in one at Fulham in the Cup as well, and I just feel this game's going to be really tight. There's so much of me that wants to go for a 1-0 Rotherham win, because Stoke, again, they're generally inconsistent despite Schumacher's positive start. But I am going to go for them to have a little bit of newfound grit with their new manager. I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline for the second time today. 1-1 between Rotherham and Stoke. Let's move on to Southampton versus Sheffield Wednesday. The Saints are flying, the unbeaten run continues. A 1-1 draw at Norwich before a big cup win as they continue to fly through the table. Just 3 points off Ipswich now in second place. They've got a real chance at automatics, haven't they? I still think between Ipswich, Saints and Leeds, it's going to be a really good battle. For Sheffield Wednesday, though, what a week. A 1-0 win at Preston, gritty. A brilliant performance against Hull. And I know in the end they were helped by the red card, but they were dominating the game before it. Gassama's goal was brilliant and he's starting to look good and settle in. Marvin Johnson, for me, is the key player for Sheffield Wednesday. He delivers in big moments. He's always a goal threat. And Danny Rowe got that team flying. They won 4-0 against Cardiff in the Cup, and a big shout out to Cameron Dawson. 2 penalty saves in 5 minutes is a cracking effort. And one of them was a particularly good one as well. In the end, they romped to victory. They kept the momentum and the confidence going. 3 wins in a row for them. The Saints just don't lose at the minute. I feel I have to go for a home win. This won't define Sheffield Wednesday's season. They've got themselves back in the mix, just 3 points away. Albeit if my predictions are right, it's going to be 6 this weekend. But I'm going to go for Sheffield Wednesday to be defeated this time. I do think they'll nick a goal. I'm going to go Southampton by 3-1. The final 3 p.m. kickoff on Saturday is West Bromwich Albion versus Blackburn Rovers. Both sides picked up convincing wins against lower league opposition in the Cup, albeit Cambridge gave Blackburn a bit of a wobble in the first half. Blackburn have been in dismal league form. There's been talk about Thomason. They've conceded 48 goals, which is only worsened by Rotherham. It's really not good enough for them. They've got a great goal threat in Sammy Schmodix, who just keeps popping up. I don't see a world in which he can be there after the end of January. Surely someone's going to take a punt. Whereas for West Brom, very much the opposite, isn't it? Whereas Blackburn just concede goals galore. It's in fact 14 in their last 5 championship games. For West Brom, it's only 3, but they never score more than 1 either. 3 scored, 3 against, and Blackburn, much the opposite story. So what do we go for to prevail here? Do we go for West Brom's tight, cautious defensive displays, or do we go for Blackburn's bonkers games everywhere? I'm going to go, I think, somewhere in the middle. I was tempted to go 2-0, but I fancy Blackburn's a nick one. So I'm going to go for West Brom 2, Blackburn 1, and what a job Corberant is doing. The late kickoff on Saturday is another big one in the top 6. It is 2nd place Ipswich against 6th place Sunderland. Ipswich just starting to run out of steam a little bit at times now. A 0-0 draw at Stoke after a 0-0 against QPR. Struggled a little bit to break down the 10 men of Stoke late on, but kept the ball well. Obviously won in the FA Cup and avoided the shock there as well. But it's just not been the usual Ipswich performances in the last couple. Of course, they're actually 5 without a win in the league now, following that East Anglian derby onwards. But if ever there's a game to bounce back, it's probably this one. Because as much as Mick Beale's Sunderland got the win at Hull with a moment of magic, of course, they beat Preston at home, who were god-awful. They looked poor at Rotherham. They were terrible against Coventry. And against Newcastle, well, it was just flat. It was a really bizarre performance. And I know a lot of Rangers fans will say, well, that's what you get from Mick Beale in the games that matter. But it really was a surprise to see it that flat. The crowd were brilliant with G and them on, but there wasn't a lot there. And Newcastle played them off the park. So for this game, I just feel if Ipswich are anywhere near their best, they'll be able to get the result. After playing every 3 days, I think for their style of play, it's great they've had a week off. And I think they're going to overrun Sunderland. They're going to win comfortably. They might well concede on the counter. I was tempted to go 3-1 again, but I'm going to go for 2-0 this time because Sunderland in the last game, they showed very little. And the final game this weekend is on Sunday lunchtime. It is QPR versus Watford. Queen's Park Rangers need a result. They're back in poor form under Marty Cifuentes. Blew a 2-goal lead at half-time in the FA Cup at the weekend, but that was against good Premier League opposition. The bigger worries, though, will be the games prior, where losing at home to Cardiff, losing at Sheffield Wednesday and Millwall, they're going to be costly in that relegation battle. 2 goals scored in their last 5 championship games. They're keeping the ball a bit better, but after that early spell, they're not showing any real signs of consistent improvement. And Watford have been a bit better in recent times, albeit the last 3, their defensive record has dried up. They were very fortunate against Chesterfield in the Cup. There were minutes from a replay, and Chesterfield would have deserved it. They gave them one hell of a game. Of course, letting 3 away at Plymouth, and while they fought back again, something that Watford didn't do in the past season, it is a concern that they're conceding so many, especially after that Bristol City game as well. So I'm not really sure what to go for in this one. Again, you've got another team at home who aren't often involved in high-scoring games against a team that's been in goals galore recently. So I'm going to split the difference again. I went for 2-1 West Brom in the other one like this. I'm going to do the same here. The visitors to win by 2-1, and QPR to sink further into trouble. So with that out of the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for in matchday 27. And actually, I've gone fairly cautious and low scoring. With a week off for most sides, I'm going to bank on defences to be a bit more solid. The energy, the pressing and the closing down to be a little bit stronger. But of course, we've got a few players away with AFCON and the Asian Cup and that. So it is going to have a bit of an effect. But the only team I've got to score 3 are Southampton at home to Sheffield Wednesday, which is a pretty bold call. I've also gone for big wins for Leeds and for Ipswich in that promotion battle at the top. And at the bottom, I've gone for a big result for Huddersfield at home to Plymouth Argyle, with the bottom 3 all to fail to win, albeit with Rotherham getting a point. But those are just my predictions for matchday 27. Do you agree or disagree? And give me your predictions for matchday 27. If you beat or match my score, you will get a shout out in the recap next weekend. But in the meantime, if you did enjoy this video, please do put a thumbs up on it. If you want more predictions to get involved in, our Premier League preview for this weekend and next is up in the eye above. It's a split weekend because of the winter break. And we've also had 3 manager specials from the Championship over the last week, as well as our AFCON preview with the tournament starting on Saturday. You can find all of those up there. But thank you very much for watching. Subscribe and turn that notification bell on to stay up to date with everything. And I'll see you back here next time for Matchday 28.